Alrighty then, welcome to the second part of my dive into my favourite movies. I'll be highlighting a lot more films I love and really enjoy here, this time in different categories, starting with some more titles I have a nostalgic connection to. So, let's just get straight into it. I have no idea how this would play to someone first discovering it as an adult. I mean, it's a gangster musical starring kids as grown-ups, including speakeasy dancers, which can feel a little uncomfortable, and featuring some of the most obvious dubbing this side of the Man with No Name trilogy.
What's the matter with you? Fight and fight some more.
But this was my Year 6 Leavers production. So at least in that way, I'm always gonna have a soft spot for it. But even then, I didn't think much about it for a few years, came back to it with relatively fresh eyes, and was still utterly charmed by it. The story is a lot of fun, Jodie Foster is really good in it, every song is an absolute banger, and the school association probably plays a part in this, but Bugsy Malone captures the carefree joy of playing make-believe where anything felt possible, unlike anything else, some of its rough edges bolstering that quality. It can't help but make me feel all warm and fuzzy inside, and as someone who isn't much of a gangster mob movie fan, it's funny to think this is technically my favourite one. I mean, just let me know when The Godfather gets remade with splurge guns and pedal cars. For many years, I had a bizarre tradition of having a pizza dinner and watching Ice Age 3 on Halloween. I randomly did it one year, then the next I was really struggling with the transition into secondary school and growing up, so I think I made it an annual thing as a way to cling to my sense of youth, and it wound up marking the point where I'd start getting excited for the Christmas season. As a result, it's probably one of my most watched movies, and I remain incredibly fond of it. I have a soft spot for the first Ice Age as well. It's got a very different, more underplayed vibe to the rest, and I might have claimed it was my favourite of the series for a while, but I've got to be honest with myself and say it's Dawn of the Dinosaurs. It's got the most adventurous tone, Buck is a really entertaining addition, several parts go surprisingly hard, and yeah, there is the personal attachment I have for it. It's much like the Scooby-Doo games, where it's a very silly, random thing to have a special attachment to, but doesn't that just reflect the magic of art? Next up, my other favourites from Studio Ghibli. It probably goes without saying that all these are beautifully animated and scored. First is My Neighbor Totoro, which captures childhood whimsy in a very laid-back, charming way. It's largely an extremely cozy watch, which heightens the impact of when the unexpectedly heavy drama of the back half emerges. There's a storybook feel to the look of Ponyo, which gives it a very unique vibe in the studio's filmography, and results in some of their most imaginative and captivating images. Plus, I'm pretty sure my driving in GTA is modelled after the mother in this. As for my favourite not directed by Miyazaki, I don't think The Cat Returns ranks that highly for a lot of people, but I've always really enjoyed how delightfully kooky and swashbuckling it is. I mean, come on, it's got essentially a feline Professor Layton, of course I'm a fan. Okay, now it's time to highlight the other Batman movies I adore and have revisited many times. First is the one which best showcases how adaptable this character is. What I love most about this movie and the show it hails from is the perfect balancing act of being in on the joke yet still earnest in its charm. The cast is so likeable, and having it all played completely straight leads to campy comedy gold. There are too many good bits I could highlight here, from the riddles.
What weighs 6 ounces sits in a tree and is very dangerous?
A sparrow with a machine gun.
To the Riddler's laugh. But it's the dedication at the start which I think best sums up why I find this movie so joyous. And much like what Mask of the Phantasm is to the animated series, this is my favourite way to return to Adam West's rendition of The Caped Crusader. If Aunt Harriet got even a single line of dialogue, I'd call it a perfect movie. Next up, the polar opposite. I do really like Batman Begins and Rises, has its moments, but The Dark Knight is far and away the peak of the trilogy and Christopher Nolan's filmography for me. I love how he plays around with time in his other work, but it is interesting that my favourite of his should be the most linear in its storytelling. The propulsive momentum built throughout, especially in the moments of perfectly executed cross-cutting, is so enthralling. It manages to be both an engrossing, gritty crime epic with a vast ensemble and complicated philosophies explored, as well as a thrilling superhero blockbuster with that stellar truck chase and a playfulness in concepts like the hostages being disguised as thugs that often gets overlooked. And with Heath Ledger's titanic performance looming over it all, this is a relentlessly gripping experience from start to finish. Now for probably my most controversial favourite. As much as I'll champion the extended cut as the superior version and essentially gaslit myself into thinking otherwise at the time, I loved this movie from day one, and it was a very formative experience for me in becoming more comfortable having and expressing my honest opinions when it came to reviewing stuff. For me, no other comic book movie, not even Snyder's others, have combined grounded grit and extravagant fantasy quite as evocatively as this. I love the stylized atmosphere which comes from that, and, although a critique for many, its complete conviction to the genre and how it throws everything in the kitchen sink. Antithesis to how these cinematic universes are supposed to work, but makes for a much heartier and fulfilling standalone experience for me. Plus that score. Mwah! So I think it's pretty obvious Batman is my favourite superhero. In second place would be Spider-Man. The dilemma between balancing the responsibilities of an ordinary life and those of the alter ego grounds the stakes and makes the down-to-earth drama equally as compelling as the web-slinging action in the best entries. 2, for instance, really makes you feel for Peter's attempts to do the noble thing, yet continually being punished for it. So the scenes where things work out, even if just for a moment, feel so rewarding. Yet despite how much Peter's hardships are focused on, Sam Raimi's distinct style still makes for an incredibly entertaining watch. Part of the reason I don't understand the re-evaluation 3 has gotten is because it really lacks the flair which made the first two stand out in the genre. The set pieces are varied and pack a proper punch, and I love how characterful New York is. The Daily Bugle antics especially are an absolute riot.
Gossip, rumors, panic in the streets. We're lucky.
But just like with Batman, my favorite Spider-Man movie is animated. Into the Spider-Verse remains one of the most overwhelming experiences I've had at the cinema. The exhilarating creativity and energy of the animation takes full advantage of the art form and made for a proper feast for the senses. The same can be said of its sequel, but while I really like that one too, I prefer the simpler story of the first. The vulnerability at the core of the character is captured to compelling effect. As insane as the visuals get, the emotion conveyed on faces stick out as some of the most impressive pieces of animation on re-watches. In 2016, I tried to watch all of the Walt Disney Animation Studios features, including the insanely boring package films of the 40s, and it was a really fun time. Many of their best have a proper sense of grandeur to them, and right from that iconic opening shot, few come as grand as The Lion King. It's funny, I got pretty excited for the 2019 remake, then just never watched it. I can't imagine experiencing this story without the bold colors and expressive animation elevating the music, genuinely heavy dramatic beats, and terrific performances, especially those of Jeremy Irons and James Earl Jones. It's probably the strongest film of the Disney Renaissance, but I do generally feel like watching Hunchback of Notre Dame more. It is flawed, you can clearly see where the bold vision ends and likely studio mandated stuff begins, but that bold vision leads to some of the highest highs of any Disney film, featuring one of their best soundtracks and easily their most captivating, sinister villain. However, my favorite animated musical of the 90s wasn't actually made by Disney. The Prince of Egypt has a powerful Hans Zimmer score just like The Lion King, whilst pushing the envelope for how dark these supposedly family-friendly affairs could be, a la Hunchback. But here, the obligated comedic hijinks heighten the tension of the conflict between Moses and Ramesses later on. It makes for such a compelling tragedy. And the scale of the emotion and visuals is magnificent, from its incredible opening all the way to its immense end. It's almost a cliche for someone to say they're not religious yet love this movie, but hey, I'm one of those people. DreamWorks have made some great animated films, many of which admittedly have just as memorable comedy as drama, but for me, this remains easily their finest work. 2016 was also the year I began reviewing on my channel. 10 years ago, oh my god. I did some I have unlisted now on movies I saw at the cinema, two I absolutely loved also being Disney films. The world of Zootropolis, as us Brits call it, is packed to the brim with wonderfully creative world building. Every time I watch it, I feel like I spot about 50 new details I never caught before. And the tightly constructed, extremely entertaining buddy cop mystery adventure takes us to so many witty, funny, sometimes dark, and eventually poignant places. Its examination of prejudice and its final message about the messiness of life and trying harder is very powerful. All this anchored by a terrific duo. Of all the great scenes in this movie, Judy's plea to Nick under the bridge has always been a standout to me. And it recently got a very entertaining sequel, unlike the next film. I think Moana is my favorite Disney movie. Its sense of adventure is so appealing to me. Its most powerful moments, of which there are many, makes this story feel like a grand legend being retold. The songs are fantastic, Moana and Maui are another immensely lovable duo, there's so much heart to their relationship by the end, and the animation, especially the water, remains spectacular. I'm very much looking forward to revisiting this again instead of seeing the remake. Okay, so the next couple of categories I'll be looking at my favorites from certain genres, starting with what I feel is the most inherently cinematic one. Ah, what a lovely time this is. The songs are iconic, the characters and situations are incredibly charming, whilst becoming very poignant in the back half, and Julie Andrews' performance is, as Poppins herself would say,
practically perfect in every way.
Now, I'm no musical theatre expert, but West Side Story has surely got to have one of the great musical songbooks. It's absolutely spectacular work, and the street gang reinvention of the Romeo and Juliet story is very well done. Sure, it's easy to make fun of these supposedly tough gang members twirling about, but it conveys this underlying anger and longing these characters are trying to relieve themselves of. I really like Spielberg's remake and do think it does several things better than the original, but the total commitment to the tragedy in the back half of the '61 film makes it so much more powerful to me. There's an electricity and heat radiating off this film I feel in my gut by the end. This is such a quality production of grit and glamour. The musical numbers are so clever, entertaining, and outstandingly edited, greatly enhancing the commentary of how easily the media circus can be exploited if you put on a damn good show. The darkness of the story frequently gets overshadowed by the razzle-dazzle of it all, which is exactly the point. I enjoy a good spoof, but Airplane is easily my favorite because it is 100% committed to the deadpan bit. There's moments in The Naked Gun where Leslie Nielsen will make an expression that acknowledges something strange and silly just happened. But here, I don't think he ever cracks a grin. Outside of Johnny, all the actors treat everything as if it is deadly serious, which makes the absurdity of it all so much funnier. The comedy is broad enough to guarantee laughs, yet subtle enough so there's plenty of new jokes to catch on repeat viewings. It's immensely rewatchable.
What a pisser.
This movie has got such a brilliant premise, and the way it's set up and developed throughout leads to lots of great comedy and very effective drama. Rewatching it in lockdown, where the Groundhog Day cycle seemed to mirror the inertia of that time, was unexpectedly powerful and life-affirming. That and Ned Ryerson is one of the funniest supporting characters.
Am I right or am I right or am I right? Right.
Although this movie is incredibly funny at times, it's the profound moments found in this great suburban adventure that stick with me the most. When I first watched it, before I'd really gotten into movies, Cameron's final scene really took me aback in how powerful it was. I always come away from it in a great mood, and the twist and shout scene has got to be one of the most joyous advertisements of the good humanity is capable of captured on film. I went into There's Something About Mary with pretty low expectations, so I was so surprised by how outrageous, unexpectedly charming, and most of all hilarious I found it to be. My favourite thing about it is how it's structured like an action movie, scattering lots of humorous little bits throughout an interesting story to keep the audience engaged before unleashing some explosively funny set pieces. The bit with Puffy on speed left me laughing for a good minute after it was over. With LA Noire being one of my favourite games, I developed an interest in things with similar period vibes as well as films that were a big influence on it, like Chinatown. It starts out very interesting, but the more the story unravels into something more sinister and tragic, the more engrossing it becomes. Plus, I don't think I've ever seen Jack Nicholson be any less than great in a movie, and this is one of his most understated and captivating roles. I'm not that crazy about the original Blade Runner, but 2049 I find to be such an immersive epic. The world building, visuals, and sound are all absolutely incredible, complementing a very captivating methodical pace and neo-noir tragedy. This is one of the most underrated films on this list. Seeing Denzel's character take on a seemingly simple job as a last-ditch resort, only to find a more complicated web of politics and violence he's forced to emotionally invest in, leads to a very unique attitude for a main character to navigate such a noir mystery with. And it only gets better once Don Cheadle enters the picture. The pairing of someone wanting out of the situation with a trigger-happy partner enjoying the danger a little too much is incredibly entertaining. Seeing Wake Up Dead Man at the London Film Festival with an enthusiastic crowd was one of the most entertaining film-going experiences I had last year, just as the other two were for their respective years. This has emerged as a great franchise, although the original is my favourite by quite a margin. There's of course the initial novelty of seeing the murder mystery modernised in such a fun way, but I also love how classic the setting feels and how it subverts the expected structure by seemingly laying out all the details of the crime early on. And I think this one utilizes the ensemble the best. Being a family means everyone feels active and important to the story, and it's such a great cast. Jamie Lee Curtis in particular is as sharp as those knives on the wall. I have such a blast every time I watch it. Inception almost feels like the quintessential Christopher Nolan movie, defining how his style would manipulate time on a massive scale. It's very creative and thrilling. That hallway fight is one of the coolest, and there's a very effective emotional undercurrent. Speaking of which, I generally disagree with the notion Nolan's films lack emotion. I mean, this is the guy who made Interstellar for Pete's sake. But I find the more stripped back storytelling of Dunkirk makes it his most purely visceral and emotionally stirring experience for me. The stellar filmmaking, unrelenting music, and the fact the Germans are portrayed as an unseen force leads to incredible intensity. It drops you right into the thick of it, and the sense of danger never lets up, which makes the relief of the boats arriving such a deeply moving testament to the will of the human spirit. I have such a vivid memory of watching Vertigo for the first time. I had some time to kill while I waited for my Breath of the Wild review footage to process. I'd never seen an Alfred Hitchcock film before, and going in blind, which I'm glad of given how much the Blu-ray synopsis gives away, I got completely swept up in its intriguing mystery and was left so shocked by the many twists and turns. While Judy falling for Scotty is a bit hard to buy, the overall experience remains a fascinating and enrapturing one. There's so many captivating elements at play, how the fabricated fantasy of Madeline and Carlotta consumes and parallels Scotty's reality, the charm and sadness of Midge's character, and how the vertigo is symbolized through San Francisco's many steep roads, and the outstanding music emulating the sensation of falling. Another great, propulsive Bernard Herrmann score can be found in North by Northwest, which, if you've never seen a Hitchcock film, I think would be a great starting point. The setup is simple yet enjoyably complicated, leading to lots of exciting suspense, genuinely funny dialogue.
Something wrong with your eye?
Yes, they're sensitive to questions. Will you call them?
And what remains a stellar action set piece in the crop duster sequence. Not only does Quentin Tarantino's enthusiasm for film and filmmaking shine through in all his work, but his style feels like the closest cinema has come to capturing the quality of a Rockstar Games production. Pulp Fiction, for instance, is not so much about the bigger picture as it is the little situations and incidents these larger-than-life characters wind up in, and the vibrant, relatable banter which stems from it. There's a great rhythm to the dialogue and the way it's delivered that makes these mundane conversations, capturing the more nonchalant side to criminal life, so entertaining to watch. And the stylish quirks, great music choices, and unique structure lend the film lots of zest on top of that. Now, if a lot of the scenarios in Pulp Fiction feel like GTA missions, then Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is a full-blown open-world movie if such a thing exists. While it can be a bit self-indulgent at times, the immaculate vibes and atmosphere make it a real blast for me. As great as Tarantino's dialogue can be, I recently read the fantastic making-of book, and it surprised me how many lines weren't in the script. Wordless moments like Sharon reveling in the cinema's reaction to her film, the sign sparking to life at night on August 8th, and particularly the California Dreamin' sequence as everyone takes the events of the day in really stick out as some of the best in the film and most unique in his filmography. It's got the most heart out of any of his films, leading to both a hilariously brutal and ultimately bittersweet climax to this fantasy about reality and the people who live in both. Alright, now here's all the films that I couldn't contrive into different categories, starting with some quickfire reviews. There are stretches of Up I only find to be pretty good, but at its best, it's one of Pixar's most wonderfully surreal and powerful works. Its exploration of moving on from the past really resonates with me, and the scene people say is the opening, but actually happens about 10 minutes in, is a mini masterpiece in and of itself. Between shedding a tear at the end of Skyward Sword and now that during the making of these videos, I fear I'm getting soft, god damn it. While I've not been keen on his last couple of films, I am generally a big fan of Wes Anderson, The Grand Budapest Hotel especially. Its style is as sumptuous and meticulous as per his reputation, whilst also brimming with life and character. It's fast-paced, inventive, full of wit, and with a lovely sense of melancholy ruminating throughout. Going into this expecting a gritty thriller, only to realize very quickly it's also an incredibly funny comedy of errors, was such a great experience. The sweaty, claustrophobic atmosphere radiates off the screen, Al Pacino is fantastic, and it also feels very ahead of its time in the delicacy with which it tackles certain subjects. This movie beautifully captures how vast and exciting the world can feel as a child, even though these characters are already grappling with a lot of trauma. It's very heartfelt and bittersweet with fantastic performances from the kids, and it is my favourite Stephen King adaptation. Second place would probably be the other one directed by the late Rob Reiner, Misery. I feel like I'm in a minority that finds the second half of Full Metal Jacket just as engrossing as the first. I really enjoy the camaraderie between the characters, and Kubrick's style makes the war action uniquely immersive. That style also makes the repetition of the training drilled into these men during the boot camp sequence a lot more harrowing, even if it can be darkly funny as well. Also, fun fact, my uncle did work on the set of this. The grainy look of this really elevates what would already be a captivating nighttime atmosphere, where this thrilling battle of wits between two very interesting characters and performances feels like it barely registers on this vast sea of a million blinking lights and dark alleyways. Like La La Land, funnily enough, teasing the possibility of similar perils unfolding with people with similar hopes, dreams, and outlooks. Man, if I'd seen this when it first came out, I would have been obsessed with it. It's quirky, inventive, really appeals to the gamer in me, and its depiction of AI is eerily relevant for a 2009 release, which in turn makes its themes of family and human connection all the more touching. This is less of a slice of life as it is slices of a life. The way scenes often begin and end with minimal context or resolution makes it feel like a collection of memories, where only the most essential details leave an imprint. It's a lovely approach to a coming-of-age film, and the vividly drawn characters and wonderful performances would make for a great one anyway. This is one of the most interesting rom-coms because of how the creative structure highlights the differences between falling in love and committing to a relationship, and the emotions that come from that inevitable imbalance. It's very clever and bittersweet. I love that final line and the fact it's narrated by Victor Goddamn Sullivan.
This is a story of boy meets girl.
This is like trying to find a bride in a brothel.
This is both a tight, thrilling thriller with zero fat on it, and a sprawling, vibrant ensemble piece elevated by the culture and grit of 70s New York it captures. The different perspectives build up the escalating suspense whilst allowing for comedy which never detracts from the sense of threat on the train. It's great, efficient entertainment from start to finish. Ah yes, the second movie on this list featuring Mr. Hamilton from Fawlty Towers and some great insults.
Who's scruffy looking?
This is one of the textbook sequels, expanding upon the world and characters of the original in very compelling ways, featuring richer atmosphere largely thanks to the beautiful cinematography and daring to take risks with the structure not all follow-ups like to. I don't always appreciate just how many of Star Wars' most iconic elements came from this entry, including a twist so famous I was never able to have the surprise of it. Brad Bird's films have always stood out to me for how natural the dialogue and acting feels compared to other animated works. This makes the characters, even the most vibrant personalities, feel properly grounded, which makes the moments of awe and wonder seem all the more wondrous. I also love the Iron Giant's profound themes, 50s Americana atmosphere, sense of humor, and very underrated score. That scene never fails to give me chills, and the momentousness of the tragically heroic music playing over it is a huge component why. This is still one of the most beautiful looking animated films I've ever seen. Just absolutely stunning work with some unforgettable images. While Makoto Shinkai's other films are usually decent, I do tend to think of him as a one-hit wonder because Your Name explores his usual occupations with love transcending cosmic transcendence so much more compellingly than anything else he's made. The initial body swap shenanigans are very entertaining and creative, but the more the threads twist and turn, the more gripping, surprisingly tense, and oh so achingly romantic it becomes. I love the Mission Impossible franchise, showcasing Tom Cruise at the peak of his movie star power and for the most part managing to be consistently entertaining for 30 years. Also consistent with this series I noticed upon rewatch is most of the great entries peak in the middle. So it's tempting to say Fallout is my favourite because holy crap does it save its best set piece for last, but I also find it's the one to best nail a feeling of weighty stakes, grandeur and espionage intrigue without losing a sense of rollicking fun, the group dynamic being at its most endearing here. And all the action is absolutely thrilling and awe-inspiring. This was the first entry I saw at the cinema, and I remember clenching my whole body trying to contain my excitement in a packed screening during that helicopter scene. I mean, the whole thing is just top-tier blockbuster entertainment. If I'd only seen it once, Moonlight would have definitely been on this list. Yet with rewatches, while still very good, I found it nowhere near as enrapturing as when it seemed to spill out more naturally, which is disappointing. I also think Barry Jenkins greatly refined his style with If Beale Street Could Talk, and it has sustained repeat viewings for me. While there's a harrowing underlying sadness to this story, the overwhelming sense of love purveying throughout is ultimately what makes it so moving to me. And not just the beautifully romantic chemistry between Tish and Fonny, but the love between family, friends and acquaintances, and Nicholas Britell's music captures the universal emotions within this very intimate tale perfectly, enveloping the viewer into an even richer atmosphere of anxiety and soul-stirring romance. It's phenomenal work, easily up there as one of my absolute favourite scores in film, and I'll forever be bitter that it lost the Oscar that year. I came across Midnight in Paris one evening and stuck it on knowing very little about it. I was sold right from that lovely opening, taking in the beauty of the city, and then slowly realizing what the story was actually going to be was such a delightful experience. It's not so much a romantic tale as it is a tale of romantics, infatuated with their surroundings and their history behind them more so than the company they're with. It's very clever how it showcases every era is nostalgic for the one before, and overall I find it to be such an easy, breezy watch. Man, the hidden foreshadowing in this thing is just insane. So many small lines of dialogue and character nuances are so satisfying to notice when you know how it all plays out, especially when it comes to Rose. The truth about her character is so apparent now despite my second guessing her the first time. That and the film remains extremely intense and gripping. The horror spin on Guess Who's Coming to Dinner and the Professor Layton movie is so cleverly done, and although there are many fantastically complex performances, the amount of comedy Rod brings to the otherwise chilling proceedings does make him feel like the true MVP.
I mean, I told you not to go in that house.
Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy's performances in the Before trilogy are so natural and convincing. The conversations about everything and nothing in particular are absolutely captivating. Midnight is a good and fitting entry, but I don't find it as consistently engaging as Sunrise or Sunset. The first really captures the feeling of taking in the exciting atmosphere of a foreign place. It's the most romantic entry for sure, adding to the impact of Sunset's overarching tension of the romanticism of that one magical night and the reality of where their lives ended up. Watching it for the first time was genuinely quite exciting. That cut to Celine in the shop, learning about what happened to the pair in real time and seeing everything gradually come spilling out, leading to one hell of a mic drop ending. I love how grimy and oppressive Gotham feels in this movie. The wonderfully moody score almost feels like a part of the scenery, and the way the power dynamic shifts as Arthur completes his transformation into Joker is very compelling. Joaquin Phoenix is marvelous, of course. The pain in his laugh is just as tangible as the violence he radiates, even in his most sympathetic and elegant, darkly cathartic moments. As deranged as it may be to admit, I do find that moment of him reveling in the chaos he's caused on the Murray Franklin show sadistically satisfying. With each rewatch, the more I get pulled into its off-kilter atmosphere and what the franchise connection adds to it. Only with the Joker image is Arthur noticed and given a platform. And although it's not on this list, I will admit to have grown a strange obsession with Folie à Deux this past year. That and Better Man really re-energized my interest in writing a musical screenplay at some point. These divisive DC sequels exploring media frenzy featuring a courtroom bombing just seem to do it for me, I guess. This would make for a fantastic double feature with Ferris Bueller, Matthew Broderick going from 80s youthful rebellion to 90s middle-class ennui, now in the Ed Rooney role with a vendetta against Bueller's antithesis. These characters are so interesting to watch because the way this plays with perspective and unreliable narrators makes these flawed, deluded people, with the exception of Paul, bizarrely sympathetic and unsympathetic at the same time. This is greatly aided by a terrific sense of style. Parts of it almost have the vibe of Fargo without the crime, and it's such a funny, sharp, and unpredictable story being told. And to finish us off, this is going off UK release, hence why I'm starting with Parasite, which came out here and I saw the weekend it won Best Picture. And although rewatches are very rewarding, that first viewing was something else. Going in blind at the recommendation of most and having the dramatic tonal shifts catch me off guard in the most thrilling way. That birthday party scene especially left my jaw on the floor, it was so insane. The way Bong Joon-ho weaves from genre to genre feels effortless, beginning as a very entertaining, sharply funny look at the lower class, quite literally rising up the social construct, before turning into this enthralling, dark thriller as the descent back down begins at the exact halfway point. A genius touch. This is one of the few rise and fall stories where the fall is the most compelling part to me. This was one of my most anticipated films ever, based solely on the trailer having the energy of early PTA. And while the final product didn't exceed expectations, it is a really breezy and fun watch with intoxicating atmosphere and two fantastic performances and characters at the center of these misadventures. And despite its loose feel, rewatches show it to be better plotted than it initially appears. It's about the war between embracing childish tendencies and living your best life, or attempting to grow up and make a meaningful difference to the world. And the back and forth this creates is very entertaining. Of all the Batman movies I've discussed, this one might have the most atmospheric depiction of Gotham, and with the greater emphasis on detective work giving it an absorbing methodical pace, the most immersive too. I love the way it sets this Batman up and how Bruce Wayne feels most like the Mask compared to other renditions. Paul Dano's sinister Riddler is captivating along with the rest of the vast ensemble. The score is fantastic, that Batmobile chase is the coolest. Every time I revisit this, the higher up my estimation I feel it goes. A critique of people's fascination with spectacle that just so happens to be an amazing one. Whether that's by design or an accidental contradiction, this movie works wonders for me. I have such a visceral response to so many sequences here, both for how brutally disturbing and absolutely thrilling they get. The filmmaking in the last act especially comes together in such a way where it barely registers as that. I find it so transfixing and overwhelming. If there were ever to be a finale to cinema as an art form, I think it would look a lot like this. A thrillingly unrestrained dive into the wildest and most formative period in film history, reckoning with whether or not the blood, sweat, and tears poured into it all was ultimately worth it. It does so with some brilliant set pieces, a great blend of fun, beauty, horror, and melancholy, and what is easily my favorite film score of the decade so far. I find a lot of rom-coms tend to prioritize the com part and forget about making itself genuinely romantic. But here's one that is both very funny and evokes the feeling of butterflies in the stomach incredibly well. On top of that, I love London, and this does a great job capturing its charm whilst giving it a unique cinematic flair. There's great detail given to the people in the background. Things as simple yet specific as a kid riding a scooter makes the atmosphere a lot more vibrant. So even though the story isn't doing anything radically different to other films in the genre, the execution is packed with so much style and heart, its resolution feels more satisfying than most other rom-coms, taking a lot less time to get there too. It's just a lovely film I can see myself returning to a lot. And last, but definitely not least, the most recent Best Picture winner. A moment that stood out to me on rewatch is Lockjaw getting into his car after Bob shoots at him as if nothing happened. It really exemplifies how little Bob impacts the outcome of Willa's story, which to some might make his parts in the second half seem meaningless. Yet the fact he's so out of his element for so much of this and is still there for her when he's needed most winds up meaning everything. And makes for a very touching end to this crazy, funny, tense, uncomfortable, timely, vast, and absolutely electric thrill ride. And there you have it. This was a blast to make. Multiple times whilst writing and editing, I'd be combing through film footage and then wind up watching for several minutes. I'm itching to go and revisit all these movies now. But before I go and do so, thank you very much for watching, especially if you've watched both parts in their entirety. I hope you enjoyed. Leave a like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Let me know what some of your favorite movies are, and I'll see you all next time. Goodbye!